Hi, I'm Susan, and I seem to be on a roll with creating some messy garden landscapes. It all started when I began to do mark making out in the garden and sometimes looking at photos of a garden. I started playing around with making marks and textures without worrying about composition. I put them on a watercolor paper, used a whole variety of materials, and once I created several pages, I would tear them up and put them in my sketchbook. And I started doing that on clapboard. My previous YouTube video shows me starting out with a few sheets of watercolor paper, taking just a few minutes of making random, trying to make interesting marks and textures, keeping a limited palette each time, and maintaining that palette throughout a set of these sketches. And then that would be step one. And then another day, usually, I would take those sketches and tear them up and place them either in my sketchbook, or in this case, my previous video shows that I tore them up and put them on a piece of a cradled board. And this is the piece that I created just a few days ago. If you want to check in comments below, the YouTube video of creating this is in my previous, I think, 20-minute video. It doesn't take very long to do this. Tear up the pages, glue them back down. And today I want to go ahead and take this one step further, possibly finish it. I'd like to take a minute though and show you what I'm talking about when I take one of these well, Joan Fullerton would call these the underpants of a painting, creating the sort of background, sketchy background. I don't know, I think it's probably going to go like this, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm having such a good time making these messy garden paintings that I want to keep doing it. So apparently I'm creating a messy garden series. I just realized that today, having done several of them. So that's what I'll call them. So I'm creating marks and textures on watercolor paper, and then I tear them up and glue them down sort of randomly. I don't worry about composition. I love the messy garden. I love the idea of being face to face, right down in the weeds and flowers and stems. And so when I paint this way, I'll show you just a few recent paintings that have evolved very quickly, actually, having fun like this. So this is one that I just named this morning. This is also on one of those clay boards. I usually paint the whole way around them, and then I have the option of either wiring them to hang just like this or putting a frame around them. These are 12 by 12 inch boards. I'll show you another couple that I've come up with just recently. This is, again, kind of a random bunch of textures, and I took it a few steps farther. This, I think, took a couple days of pondering where to place marks and how to tone some things down. But sometimes I don't work too hard at toning. I kind of like the raw nature of some of these marks that I create quickly and randomly. So this one is, I haven't decided if this one's finished yet, but I wanted you to see work in process. I feel like there's a lot that is unresolved here, but I don't think that it's always important for an artist to give the viewer the whole bit of information. So if this creates a puzzle for someone to look at, that's great. I like that. I have to ask myself when I look at this. Now, would this be ferns down in here? Maybe some berries? I feel like I'm looking deep through the wooded forest, and I love that kind of abstraction when I view it, and I'm having a really good time making it too. So tune in and watch me as I work on this piece and maybe draw it to a conclusion today. Again, this is the piece that I did a video of, bringing it to this point. So let's see if I can resolve this. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I need to do is remove this bit of watercolor paper that went over the edge. I just was noticing that I did not paint the edges of this particular board, so it remains to be seen. Maybe today I will go ahead and paint them, but I'm going to take an X-Acto knife, razor, and I'm going to just go along the edge to clean this up. Okay, we had a bit of a focusing problem, but I've removed that bit of watercolor paper. And let's clean this side up a little bit. It works for me a little bit better when I'm pulling the knife toward me rather than pushing it. So this way I can control tucking it right up against the board, the X-Acto knife that is, and pulling. Okay, alrighty. Not perfect, but as messy as this is, chances are the viewer is not going to worry about the edges of the paper. Now, the question is, first of all, which way do I want this to go? I rather like this. Okay, I'm going to call this up, this side up, and these are confused grasses that are growing down, but let's not get too picky at this point in time. I'm going to just do some flowers out of my imagination, having fun with a few tools that kind of make flower shapes. I have a favorite tool that a friend gave me when I did a workshop. A lady gave this to me, and it's an old-fashioned, wonderful makeup brush. It's tough as nails. I have put many miles on this since she gave it to me, and I think it's the coolest thing. After this friend of mine gave me this cool brush, makeup brush, I went out and purchased a couple more. They are wonderful brushes for these petals and making big washes. Look at this. This was just a few dollars, and I can wash and wash and wash the acrylic paint out of this, and it's holding up better than many of my watercolor and acrylics brushes, so I'm really enjoying some of these. I also like to have a small palette knife as a tool, so let's get started. Now when I look at this, I'm thinking, where might I have some fun putting some flower shapes, flower colors down? I don't want all of them to be right here in the foreground in my face. I want some of them to hint that they are way far back in the garden, and sometimes scale can help create that. So let's see, what color? I always enjoy using dioxazine purple in my florals, so I'll put a little purple out on my paper. And I think today I'm going to use titanium white. I often use gesso, but I've replenished my white. I like to put my paints in these squirt bottles because it's just so easy to use them, to put out exactly an amount. This happens to be Nova Color paint. It's sort of a halfway between a fluid acrylic and a tube thicker acrylic. So let's put a few flower shapes in. Maybe we'll go with a palette knife first. Sometimes I don't mix a lot. I like some things to be mixed on the page. Or in this case, on the board. I'm putting these in thinking that maybe they will read kind of like lupins or, I don't know, delphiniums. Up in Western New York, I had some delphiniums that were about this color, that were perennials. I miss my New York garden. At a certain point in time, my husband and I decided that we needed to sell our lake house a couple of years ago and stay permanently in the Houston area, and I do love living here in Houston, but the summers in Western New York were glorious. So this is getting pretty busy, but that's okay. I've never shied away from busy. We can always tone things down a little later. Okay. I'll bring this to the camera so you can see a little bit of the happy little flowers. There is an artist, a TV artist with curly hair who used to create happy little trees, and so I say that with some tongue in cheek, but it is fun. We're having a good time. Put a little white into that. I think I'm going to need to let that dry before I work very much more on that. Okay, what would go with that? I love my newly acquired quinacridone, let's see, red, I think, quinacridone red, which looks red, like a red shade, and it's called red. But when I have been mixing it, it seems to be more pink to me, and it mixes beautifully with this purple. So let's give this a try. And maybe we'll go with a different brush. This is a little bit fatter. Maybe I'll mix some pink with some purple. And I'm rolling this. I like to create petals by just rolling my brush. I don't have enough white. Okay. When I use titanium white paint, it doesn't go nearly as far as my gesso does. The gesso is very opaque and a little thicker than the paint, and so I think it's a little bit different to use. It has more texture, as you might assume, but I have to stop and think about it when I realize I have been using gesso lately in my mixes rather than titanium white, and I'm realizing once again that yes, the texture is a little different. So I like my flowers to be placed kind of randomly. You know, I'm not a good gardener. I like lots and lots of flowers around me, but I tend to like the, I guess it would be considered an English garden, where you have just densely planted flowers, some perennials, some annuals, and they come up here and there. Maybe the seeds are scattered. I will put some stems in a little later, and I might tone down some of these passages of green. We'll wait and see. I'm just kind of placing flowers around. So I'll wet that brush a little bit because I don't want the acrylic to dry on there. I want to have a little bit of yellow. I see that I used, I think, some Indian yellow when I was mixing, and it is pretty brash. I think when I was making my marks previously, it tended to be pretty brash, so I had to tone it down, but I still want to use the same yellow for color harmony purposes. And a little more quinacridone red, which I call pink. Oops. So that's gray. That's interesting because it got some of that purple in there with the yellow. So let's try this again. I want to have some yellow, Indian yellow, with some of this quinacridone red. And oh my, that's an exciting red. I might put a little of that here and there. Now these paints, I can tell, are drying here on the board rather quickly. It's the middle of February, February 10th today, and it got a little bit warm, and when it gets warm here in the Houston area, it gets humid. So we turned our air conditioner on just briefly to take the humidity out of the air, and it dries the paint very quickly. So let's see. I just want a hint of some flowers here and there. Maybe go in with some yellow, a little more yellow than red here. One of my favorite tools is my finger. I feel like I need another type of flower in here somewhere, and I think I'll use the yellow, but I think I need another type of application. I have some children's paint brushes here that have sort of a wiry, harsh sort of brush, and I think maybe yes, that's what I'm after. A mark that sort of gives a, I don't know, a dandelion type of effect. I like that. I'll put some centers into it in a minute. Yeah, I like that. Where shall I put more dandelions? Oh, maybe put one up here. If I load it too full of paint, it doesn't quite give me that scratchy look. There, that's what I'm after. Shall we put one here? Let's see. that roughness. That warms it up a little. And I don't want to overdo this. I believe I used Indanthrone blue up here, so I might get the Indanthrone and see what I can do with that. And this nifty little makeup brush, again, a little makeup brush. This came in a set of several, I would say 4 or 5 in a set at the dime store. So that was an amazing find on a day where I showed up at a workshop and forgot my brushes. It was quite a dilemma. I don't know if this is the right blue. But it's attractive, and I like having the swirls. I don't want my marks to go in the same direction. I want busy, messy. Seems to be working for me right now, busy, messy. Yep. Nice. Put some darker up in here. Have it go a little lighter up here. I don't want to get into the uh-oh, finger painting again. Okay. Of course, acrylic paint goes darker as it dries. Let's see. That kind of is a gray green, isn't it, with my mixture? Not nice. I'll pick that up. In fact, I may pick some of the rest of this up. I like the dabbing. Gives even more texture. Oh, it dried quite a lot, but I think I can put some more scratching in there. I like to scratch. That's one of the things that's fun about using these boards. Okay, well, we have some blue in there. I'm not crazy about it. I think I'm going to go back to my Prussian for this type of painting, and I'm going to pop some deep green into here because the deep green is primarily what I used with Indian yellow, and kind of like that mix. Let's see what we can do with the insides of our daisies here. I don't want to get rid of all of the green There's a little green showing through, and kind of like that. Indian yellow, in this case, seems to be fairly transparent, so I may need to mix a little white, titanium white into it just to get it to show up a bit. If I sound unsure, it's because I am unsure. I really enjoy a process of discovery. I don't really tend to go back to things that I've already figured out. I always want to be challenging myself to try things in a new way, try something different, something that I really appreciate. This is not working for me up in here, but I think I'm going to leave it. It doesn't make that much difference, really. It's not an important thing going on up there. Maybe I'll just add a little definition to it, even though it's in the background, because I was working with paints that were transparent enough that they read kind of as though I could see the green through the red and yellow, and that was a little odd. So I wanted to give those just a little bit more definition. We play with the transparency with acrylics, and that's part of the fun. Put a few of these over here, I think. And at this point, I kind of like the lights, the bright areas down in here, but I feel like I need some stems. So I'm going to get a liner brush, and I purchased this batch of liner brushes from Cheap Joe's recently. It had 5 brushes in it, and I've been using this larger one with my larger paintings, but I think I'm going to use a little bit smaller one today. And mix some green. I don't want it to be terribly dark. This Indian yellow is a weak color to mix. The CADs mix a little bit easier or better, but where there's a will, there's a way, and I don't want to jump ship and use a different palette all of a sudden. So at this point, I just want to imply a stem here. And I don't want to necessarily get real tight with this, because this is a very loose painting, and if I got right down here and choked the ferrule and drew very rigid lines, it just wouldn't seem to fit this piece. So I'm just putting just a little suggestion of green into my flowers. I think I'll make some stems come up out of there. I like stems. To me, they really make the flower painting. I want some dark, and I know I shouldn't be painting the darks with my liner brush, but it gives kind of a random mark. And I needed a little contrast there. I like to paint with the palette knife. And scratch. To me, it gives a real look of the garden, the grasses. I like to paint with the back of it. Okay. Get that back. Let's see. Just adding more texture, more paint, more garden. Just enjoying moving the thing around, the tool. I like to play with tools. It doesn't really matter what I put down here, because if there's something that I don't like, I can cover it up with something else. Let's see, now I'm assessing whether my eye is moving around, and yeah, it's pretty wild. I'm gonna get some green here again, and I wanted to put some stems here on my delphiniums, if you will, if that's what they are. Without being too meticulous. Just something that kind of reads stemish, if that's a word. No, that's not a word, I'm sure. Let's see if I can get this in here. I'm kind of lost in my painting here. Not really thinking, I'm just putting down marks as I think of what the painting needs. I think I can do with a little more stem. I decided this particular flower needed something more. That is a busy painting. And finally, something that I always enjoy doing is to take my palette knife or my finger or a brush and fling some paint. Fling a little paint. To me, that's great fun. So what could we afford to have in here that would make some sense in terms of color flung? I think in this case, I'm gonna put a little yellow here and mix it with some of my quinacridone red and see what I come up with. Oh, wow. Yes, that's what I like. Yes. A little down here. Yes, isn't that fun? All right, right in there. And that begins to make sense of some of these less vibrant colors. Little bits of flowers. I don't want to overdo this. I might just leave it. In fact, I think I will. And I will thank you for joining me. I'm not promising that I'm going to leave this alone. I will wait until it's thoroughly dry. In my next video, I will be varnishing a couple of these paintings, and that helps me determine whether or not they're finished. As they dry, you can look earlier in this video, a lot of these colors were more vibrant, and as they dry, they sort of deaden. This is an example of how the paint sort of has died away. And when I varnish it with gloss varnish, it will bring the excitement back to these colors. So tune in next time for an example or a demo of varnishing a couple of these paintings so that you see the difference. Thanks for joining me.